And hello, good people. Welcome to the To Be Encouraged podcast with Bishop Julius C. Trimble. This is the podcast where we look to offer an encouraging word in an often discouraged world. I'm your co-host, Reverend Dr. Brad Miller. And today, Bishop Trimble, we are recording our time here in during the Advent season. And Advent season, Christmas season is also a time it's always a time of celebration and good things, wonderful things, but it's also a time for a lot of people to experience depression, loneliness, other difficult things of a kind of emotional mental health variety. And I think you got some thoughts about that there today, do you not? But first of all, hello and greetings and happy Advent to you, my friend. How are you doing?
Well, thank you, Brad. It is well with my soul, and I hope it's well with yours. And for those of us, for those who will benefit from this podcast, I hope it is well with your soul. Advent, as for those of us who are Christian, is a season of preparation and anticipation leading up to the birth of Christ. And we focus on things like what does it mean really to bare our souls and to make ourselves vulnerable and to focus on centering ourselves on the promise that is to be delivered in the birth of Jesus Christ. So it's often a season of preparation and celebrations, but for many people, it's also a season of grief because you remember the people that have lost or people that are no longer with you during that time, and it's often one of the greatest seasons of great loneliness.
Hmm.
And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about, Fred, was how Advent and the church and those of us who embrace the ministry of encouragement can really serve as an antidote, an instrument of God's peace and an antidote to loneliness
Yeah.
by creating more community.
Well, I know, Bishop, you've been in ministry a long time and involved with local church work and administrative duties, and now you have responsibilities really around the world in many ways regarding what you do in the church. But can you describe a time when you either seen or experienced, perhaps even a little bit of loneliness or what they sometimes call the Christmas time blues? Have you seen that in other people, for instance, or and how's it been manifested?
Well, I've seen it, and like most of us, at some point we'll get a chance to experience it. I can think many, many years ago when I was a college student, my mother called to tell me my grandmother had passed away.
Okay.
And she said, it was really no need for me to try to come home. But I remember just feeling a terrible sense, and this is decades ago, as a teenager, feeling a terrible sense of, uh, who do I share this with? I didn't even share it with my a college roommate or my buddies in college. I spent some time just really feeling like, wow, this is what it's like to lose a grandparent that you loved. And there have been other times that even though through ministry you're around a lot of people, uh, you notice that people can be with people, but also experience a deep sense of loneliness. And Brad, to be quite honest, I believe that sometimes scripture platitudes is not just good enough.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. We need to be more involved with that. And I think it's really Bishop. This is a more common experience a lot of people want to let on because it is the season of good cheer and so on, and Santa Claus and presents and meals and family gatherings. That's all good stuff. But almost everybody has some sort of a story, sort of like what you just shared there about how loneliness or some blues crept into their life. A very quick one for me is found myself in Chicago, your hometown, one Christmas day and the evening of Christmas Day, like 10 o'clock. Anyhow, long story short, very long story, very short. I found myself stuck in a traffic jam in downtown Chicago on Christmas Day for about 6 hours. From about 4 in the afternoon to about midnight. I was sitting still in traffic because of there was car on fire and things like this. Well, I remember feeling very low, very on Christmas Day. I'm thinking this is my way of spending Christmas in a traffic jam in downtown Chicago, and feeling very sorry for myself, and I had to get out of
Mm.
that. And I think this is a kind of a some way or another a common experience. And yet, I think you said Scripture's not enough to only because we need to I think this application of scriptures is part of what we're talking
Mhm.
about here. But tell me some thoughts or strategies or what's going through your mind about you've described oftentimes loneliness as being basically an epidemic, and I certainly affirm that. I believe loneliness is an epidemic in our world now. But how can we kind of apply the message of the Advent Christmas season to this epidemic of loneliness?
Well, I think it's good to understand that I would argue that one of the great promise and great themes of the scriptures from the Old to the New Testament is God's promise that God would always be with us.
Mm.
Now, loneliness may magnify the feeling that it doesn't feel like God is with us or anybody else is around us. But
Hmm.
God promise still exists, and Advent is a season where we actually prepare ourselves to focus on the completion, if you will, or the delivery on that promise. That's when the word becomes flesh and dwells among us in a baby called Jesus. But
Right.
the scriptures from the Old to the New Testament, I will not leave you as an orphan. Psalm says, the Lord is close to those who seek him. Psalm 139, where shall I go? Where shall I flee from your presence? For wherever I go, God is present with us. Deuteronomy and Hebrews God promises never to leave us nor forsake us. So we may say that the Lord is our helper and I will not fear. But my argument, Brad, is that these scriptures are true, but though that could be true at the same time people are feeling terribly alone that with the absence of community. The church has an opportunity
Yes.
to create opportunities to worship, special worship services and invitation to gathered meals, and for people to take their own witness serious enough to invite. My youngest son, made let us know that during Thanksgiving, he got an email from neighbors who lived down the road from him, uh, who invited him, surprisingly to him,
Wow.
to a Thanksgiving meal. And so that's one of the things we can do to really address it. How do we invite people in? Because in
Mm.
the current geopolitical environment, everybody seems so polarized
Oh,
that
yes.
we
Yeah.
don't we don't want to invite anybody close to us, and we want to leave
Yeah.
people on.
People have chosen in many cases to be isolated in their own silos for things of that nature and are avoiding interacting with other folks who are unlike them in some re, regard. But you know what, Bishop, I really am convinced. See what you think. That still something about the Advent Christmas season gives people a hunger to reach out and to be connected in some way or another. I think it's evidence in that even now, in the time when many churches kind of struggle with attendance and finances and all kinds of other things,
Mm.
still Christmas Eve and the season around Christmas is when people come to church, don't they? The Christmas Eve service, particularly, I'm thinking of, churches are generally you know, close to full or very much full or multiple services, things of this nature. I know the church I attend usually has about 50 people on any given Sunday morning, and it's about 150, 200 there on Christmas Eve. So that tells me there's something going on. People are hunger to get reconnected at Christmas. Do you believe that's the case?
I believe absolutely. In fact, my wife and I were talking just the other day because one of our sons going to be with us for Christmas. And we were saying, where do we want to go for Christmas Eve candlelight service?
Right.
Because it's such a rich tradition. But even for those who may not even have a church home, Advent really is a season that shifts the the focus on what we lack, what we may not have in our own personal experience, to what's called communal hope. So the Advent season is a time for the community to look forward to a promise that God has made. And I think we ought to make a promise to ourselves and to our communities. Number one, to magnify kindness.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yes.
wait for people to come to us, to our churches, for us to bring the season of Advent, and the presence of Christ to them.
And that needs
It
to be that needs to be very practical manners too, don't you think so, Bishop? Very practical, not just thoughts and prayers, but actually, for instance, my church has a time when we go to a central location and we pick up packages to take to needy folks, other things of that nature. Don't you think so? To be tangibly do something.
Absolutely, yeah. You can decide you just and one of they say one of the greatest antidotes to loneliness is service.
Yes.
If you if you choose to engage in service, acts of mercy, acts of grace, acts of justice, then you that can be somewhat of an antidote to your own loneliness. Society has been moving in this direction for some time, and some would say even 2 decades. Uh, there was a book written 2 books, one I know you're familiar with, I think you told me about it, but one of the books was written in 1995 entitled Heat Wave: The
Mm.
Social Autopsy of the, Hot Summer in Chicago.
Okay.
And in fact, we lived in Cleveland, Ohio at the time, but
Yes.
I was very interested because I'm from Chicago.
Sure.
700 people died in Chicago.
Yeah.
Now, it was hot all over the country in many places.
Right.
But it was extremely hot, and the author did a social autopsy, and basically, Brad, you know what he found out? That many people, many older, senior citizens died because of loneliness. No one
Yeah.
checked on them. They were not
Right.
connected to church. They didn't have a church community. They weren't part of a senior center.
Yeah.
Uh, they weren't part of a card club or yeah, and so or then and they didn't have immediate family members who lived with them. So 700 people died unnecessarily because of lack of a community. The book later, I think you might have told me about this book, or maybe not, I can't remember. In 2000, Robert Putnam wrote a book entitled Bowling Alone. You remember that book?
Oh yeah. 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 Bowling
Yeah.
alone. Yeah. And
And he basically that was it. That basically he was saying, while more people were bowling, more people were actually bowling not necessarily in leagues, but bowling by themselves. And it really talked about how we were experiencing life more, uh, by ourselves as
right.
opposed to
And there's things that people can do just to be intentional about checking on people either in your life or maybe you even have a kind of peripheral experience of and that that type of thing. And loneliness is pervasive. I'll share one quick story about that bowling alone sort of a thing there. My wife used to work in downtown Indianapolis and commuted on the city bus from where we live about 15 miles away oftentimes. And one time I rode the bus down there just to, because of some car issues, I rode the bus down there to pick her up and I took the car down there to her and then rode the bus home for me. So that was one of the few times I'd ridden the bus in a long, long, long time. I found myself sitting next to a guy who rode the bus uh, all day long. He bought the daily pass or whatever it is, and that's what he would did. And he just passed his day by riding the bus. And I said, "Well,
Mhm.
where do you ride the bus to?" And he says, "Well, I'm not really going anywhere. I just go and just ride it all day long." And I thought, because then he
Oh, wow.
described his loneliness a little bit, but I've has that in mind about some people are just kind of like you talk about bowling alone. Some people were just riding the bus or doing other things just to pass the time because they have nothing else to do. And I just think that's going on all the time. And my goodness, if the church, isn't the church called, aren't Christians called to connect up with the lonely? Are we not?
Yes, we often call it, yeah, some people say, "Well, we really wanna take time to be faithful to Matthew 25, feed" I said, "Feeding we can't feed the hungry and clothe the naked unless we're really not also unless we're willing to address the lonely."
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
and I really appreciate as a church in Indianapolis, when I first came to Indiana, where, they serve meals, but they only serve meals if the volunteers you can't volunteer unless you're willing to eat with the people who actually
Oh,
serve.
yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and so I'm not I was when I was first came as a bishop and we went there, and they said, "We will be serving, but you will serve and eat with the people that we're serving.
Mhm.
And so it was a tremendous experience because it reminded me, while I have a family and extended family and friends, kind of concentric circles of support or at least affiliation or
Right.
acquaintances, that there's so many people, Brad, that have no one. And that's why I believe that that commandment to love God and love neighbor is so powerful and so important. And we really, really have to extend ourselves. And I would just say it. And I'm preaching to myself and to what I really have to extend ourselves to be cognizant of the fact that people want to experience some semblance of belonging and
Yeah.
community, and we
Well,
can extend that.
if we wanna extrapolate and apply the biblical nativity story, the Christmas story to this here, Mary and Joseph were, not accepted. There was no room at the inn, so they were put
Mhm,
out. Even the shepherds were ostracized in many ways. The whole story there. The wise men came from the east because they had to get away from other forces or they had to get away from other forces that were going to attack them. People were ostracized and cast out, and yet this is a story of the stranger being welcomed and coming into our midst and changing everything. And so I just think, my goodness, what a great story! What a great time, and what an opportunity when people are open to this for the church to make a difference, for Christians to make a difference, for people who really care for others of whatever faith they are to make a difference because loneliness kills. It does.
mhm. Yeah, I would say if you have a church that you know it's really good at welcoming, then take it upon yourself to be an ambassador for that church. Now, if you have a church, you're not sure how welcoming you are, don't go out advertising and inviting, 'cause that might be even more we might be adding more salt to an open wound, and I say this in all
Yeah.
seriousness.
Well,
That
unfortunately, it's so
we
true.
don't wanna, yeah, we don't wanna invite people to to experiences that won't be uplifting or won't be, value adding to their lives.
Well, in an age of many people who portray themselves as Christians and yet are uh, more Christian nationalist type of leaning, there's agendas there that are not really based on the true sense of grace and welcoming that is pretty foundational to Christianity. And if you point people towards those places, they may experience a toxic form of the Christian experience, which is not helpful, and so it can be further ostracizing. So I think that's even the more important that those churches and those Christians and those pastors and leaders who have a sense of the grace and the welcoming of the stranger and those who are immigrants and others who are ostracized, the others, whatever they are, that they are us and we are them.
I wanna make a promise, to those who will hear this podcast. One of the things I'm gonna be doing this Advent is lighting candles,
Mm,
which is not uncommon in our household.
right.
A big thing, not just the Advent candles, but lighting a candle. And one of the things I remember traveling to the Holy Land of Jesus, and going into, uh, several sanctuaries, where there was an opportunity, whether it was an Orthodox or an open, uh, church, to light candles.
Hmm.
And, that I felt a strong sense of community because I saw other people. There was no speaking, there was no exchange of, but there were multiple people coming and going, and you could be quite close to someone or follow someone who also was lighting a candle, and then to light a candle. So I
Yeah.
light candles to think of the many others who may need to know how much God truly, truly loves them.
Yeah.
And, this is a season to do that.
Indeed. Indeed. And that, yeah, lighting the candles are just symbolic of, bringing light and warmth and energy into places that are dark and dreary and lack energy, and that we are called as Christians to do just that, bring light to a dark world, and to do that. And I think it's interesting and a beautiful thing when there are tragedies and people lose life and so on. That oftentimes things like candles are lit, and other things like ribbons, colorful ribbons, or teddy bears, any number of other symbols that are brought forth to provide comfort and illumination where there's loneliness and darkness. And
Mhm.
we can do that because we're called to be encouragers, aren't we? That's your theme, right? To be an encourager.
Well, to be encouraging, and during Advent, we in the Christian church and many denominations practice the lighting of the Advent candles for each week. Hope, peace, joy, and love. And those are things that, whether you're a believer or not, you probably wouldn't argue that that would really benefit you and benefit us as community to add to magnify hope, to magnify peace, to experience joy, and to know that you are loved and to love others. So when we light those candles, those Advent candles, we are also making a commitment to magnify those very principles.
Yeah, that is awesome to do those things there. Well, let's kind of bring us around to this, Bishop. You are in a position where you've often been an encourager to pastors and church leaders in around the world. I know you have in a position now where you have lots of connections there, and so you see there's a special kind of disconnection and loneliness sometimes that clergy and other people go through that are in leadership and positions. So, what would be your encouragement as a bishop of the church and a leader in the worldwide United Methodist Church? What would be your encouragement to clergy or other leaders who are trying to be encouragers to others who follow the gospel, if you see what I'm talking about, but need to be built up a little bit themselves, to be fed a little bit themselves? What would be a way that you can encourage those folks as we in this Advent Christmas season?
Sometimes when the snow comes, if you get too much snow, you can get stuck in the snow, and you can try a little harder. The wheels spin, and you can pull yourself out of the snow. But sometimes you can actually find yourself in a ditch. And if you're in a ditch, and I've been in a ditch before, I've been stranded before, or I've had a car that wouldn't start because of a battery. Uh, you know what you do? You have to call for help. You call AAA, or
Yeah,
you call for help. And I use that as a metaphor to say, if you find yourself stuck in a just a little bit of snow, sometimes prayer and a phone call to a friend, or calling someone who's you can trust, or a family member can get you out. But sometimes you might find yourself in a deeper ditch when you really need to get
yeah,
therapist or a counselor, and I've used both. I've benefited from both. Um, Sometimes I've been able to just, pray my way through something, but I think most on most occasions that I can now look back and celebrate, it's been because of others. It's been being part of a larger community where others can see. Everybody doesn't really understand what pastors go through, Brad. You and I do,
yeah,
or everybody doesn't understand what sometimes people who are supposed to be have faith can find themselves in a ditch, or find
right,
themselves in a valley. And because people are expecting, because you're quote unquote a Christian, or you believe, why don't you just pray your way out of this, or put
right.
on a happy put on a happy face. But sometimes you can't put on a happy face because you're not happy. You're not feeling.
There you go.
But I joke around with a couple of my buddies, and I say, they say, "How you doing, Julius?" I will say some. I said, "Well, I'm not in a ditch today, but had you called me a few days ago, I may needed you to pull me up out of this ditch." But I would say we need to take away the stigma, Brad, seriously,
Yes,
from the need of help, whether it's diagnosed depression or not. Sometimes it's not diagnosed depression, but it's a sense of loneliness or frustration, or how do you measure whether you're making a difference? And I want to say to those who are in the ministry, to say you are making a difference because God called you to be faithful, and that if you find yourself in a ditch, um, after you pray just a little bit, reach out for help.
well, I love what you said there about overcoming the stigma. Sometimes there's this image that clergy or church leaders sometimes have it together, and Oftentimes, we just simply don't have it together. It may appear that
Mhm,
way, and so we don't need to be too proud to not reach out to be some
mhm,
practical help. We need it all, don't we? We need scripture, we need prayer, we need friends, family, and sometimes we need professional help and others as well. And I know that you're a resource for that, and I think that. I know that I can offer myself as a resource for that too, and we can point people towards help if they want to do that, and they can reach out to us through your website, toBeEncouraged.com, and people can be in contact with us there. Well, my
mhm.
friend, any other closing comments you might want to make, either from your scriptures, your prayer life, personal experiences, or anything regarding this topic we've been talking about here today about Advent, Christmas, and loneliness?
But I want to say that the church has a tremendous opportunity. I say the church writ large, with the capital C, not any specific denomination, but those who profess to be the follower, the one who will come on Christmas, the baby that changes everything. We can make a big difference, and we can make it not just by inviting people to come to where we are, but by being the church wherever we are. And to those who don't have a spiritual home, I will say God loves you in a very special way. I find it my ministry, and I really appreciate you, Brad, helping us do this, helping me do this,
Yeah.
to encourage all people with the love of Jesus Christ, not only to rise to your highest potential, but to know that you are loved and that you matter. I saw someone with a shirt in the airport not long ago, and I really loved the shirt. The shirt simply said, I am enough.
Yes. Well, I love that. And what a great place for us to stop there that you are loved, you matter, and I am enough. I love that. And so you're always an encourager, Bishop Trimble, and I appreciate you encouraging me and our good folks who are good listeners here, the To Be Encouraged podcast. And we thank you for being that. And we wish you a blessed holiday season to you and your family. And we look to hearing much more from you in this holiday season and other times as well as we embark before too long in the new year and how we can continue to carry out your mission of helping people to be encouraged. What is it you want to encourage? Like 2 million people? Is that what it is? I forget
Oh
what.
yeah, 2 million people, and I'm echoing the words of my mother who, passed away in 2025 this year, peace and love, and I'll sign
Peace.
off with that, Brad. Peace
Peace
and
and love.
love.
Peace and love. Well, thank you for sharing here today. You've been listening to the To Be Encouraged podcast with Bishop Julius C. Trimble. I'm your co host, Reverend Dr. Brad Miller. This is the podcast where we offer an encouraging word to an often discouraged world.